Everyone at that firm thought they knew exactly who I was. They were wrong about all of it. My name's Emily. I'm 29. And for 6 years, I was the assistant nobody at Whitfield Cross bothered to learn anything about. Beyond the fact that I was useful, I got the job right out of college, entry level, the kind of role they hand you and say, just for a year or two, until something better opens up. I remember my first day so clearly. I wore a blazer I'd bought specifically for the interview, sat at a borrowed desk because mine hadn't been assigned yet, and thought, genuinely thought, that if I just worked hard enough here, I'd be running my own book of clients within 5 years. 6 years later, I was still there. Same desk, eventually assigned to me, after all. Same gray cubicle wall with a coffee stain shaped like Florida that I never bothered to clean because somewhere around year 3, I stopped believing this was temporary enough to bother. Here's the thing about me nobody at that office ever understood. Numbers stay in my head, not memorized, just there, the way some people remember faces. I can watch a stock chart for 10 seconds and see the pattern underneath it before the firm's own modeling software finishes loading. I never told anyone that. I didn't have to. They figured it out fast enough, and once they did, they used it. Brandon figured it out first. Tall, loud, the kind of guy who high-fived people after phone calls. He'd bring me a mess of numbers at 4:40, 10 minutes before he wanted to leave, and say, "Hey, can you just clean this up real quick? You're so good at this stuff." I'd stay until 9. He'd present it the next morning like he'd built it himself. The days were all the same shape. I'd get in early, before anyone else, when the office was quiet enough to actually think. I'd leave late, after the cleaning crew had already vacuumed around my chair twice. In between, I fixed other people's mistakes and watched them take the credit, standing up, in meetings, with their hands moving while they talked. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that for a long time, the comments started small and never really stopped. "You're so weird, you never talk. All you do is work. Don't you have, like, a life?" Ashley said that one, laughing, in front of 4 other people like it was a fact everyone already agreed on. I just smiled. I'd gotten good at that particular smile. The one that doesn't reach anywhere close to your eyes, but reads as fine from a distance. I went to the bathroom after that specific comment and stood at the sink for a full minute, gripping the edge of the counter, just breathing. What the hell is wrong with having a life that isn't performed for an audience? I whispered to the mirror, and then I fixed my mascara and walked back out like nothing had happened. Because that's what you learn to do. Marcus, my manager, brought up a promotion every year at my review. 3rd year, definitely next cycle, Emily, you've earned it. 4th year, budget freeze. 5th year, we just don't have the head count right now, but I see you. 6th year, I stopped asking. I think that's when I actually started listening to what was happening to me. There's a holiday party I still think about, from my 4th year. Open bar, string lights. Everyone loosened up in that particular way office people get after 2 drinks. Tyler, another broker on our floor, raised a toast to the real MVPs of this place and gestured around the room at the senior brokers, one by name. He got through 6 names. He didn't get to mine. I was standing right there, holding a club soda, because I never drank at those things, and I watched him forget I existed in real time, in a room I'd helped fill with revenue nobody could see. Nobody noticed, I'd noticed. That was sort of the whole problem, actually, being unseen so completely that even your own hurt goes unwitnessed. I lived small on purpose, studio apartment above a laundromat, the kind where you fall asleep to the hum of dryers. I packed lunch every single day, the same turkey sandwich, the same apple, because buying lunch out felt like a luxury I hadn't earned yet. Every dollar I didn't spend went into a savings account with a name I never told a single person. Someday. I was so sure someday would arrive on its own. That if I just worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, made myself useful enough, someone would eventually see it and hand me what I'd earned. My sister called most Sundays. She'd ask how work was, and I'd say, "Fine, busy," and change the subject, because I didn't have the words yet for what was actually happening to me in that building, and because some tired, proud part of me didn't want her to know how small I'd let myself become. I lied to her by omission for years. I think about that more than almost anything else now. Nobody was ever going to hand me anything. I just didn't know that yet. The night everything cracked started like any other Thursday. Brandon had a client presentation the next morning, a full portfolio rebalancing strategy for one of the firm's biggest accounts. He needed the analysis by end of day, which in Whitfield Cross language meant by whenever I finished, regardless of what time that actually was. I built the whole thing, the risk modeling, the sector rotation logic, 3 contingency scenarios in case the client pushed back. I stayed until 11:40 that night, alone, the office lights on a timer that kept clicking off around me every 20 minutes until I waved my arm at the sensor again. The next morning, Brandon walked into the conference room with my analysis printed on his letterhead template. He didn't even change the font. He presented it beautifully. Confident, funny, exactly the kind of performance that gets you noticed in that building. The client loved it. Marcus loved it. At the end of the meeting, Marcus said, in front of everyone, "Brandon, this is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need more of here." Brandon caught my eye for half a second, across the table. He didn't even look guilty. He looked like he'd already forgotten whose work it was. I sat there and said nothing. Again, how many times can someone hand you their mess and their credit in the same breath before you stop counting? I'd lost count, somewhere around year 4. That night I went home, and I didn't cry right away. I put my bag down, I took off my shoes, and I just stood in the middle of my studio apartment for a long time, not moving, listening to the dryers humming through the floor. And then it hit me all at once. 6 years, stacked on top of each other, every single, "just clean this up real quick," every, "you're so weird," every promotion that evaporated the moment I asked about it. I sat down on my kitchen floor, still in my work clothes, and I cried harder than I had in years. Not quiet crying. The kind that comes from somewhere underneath your ribs. "God, I'm so tired," I said out loud, to no one, to the empty apartment. "I'm so fucking tired of being invisible." And somewhere in the middle of that, something shifted. I stopped crying about what they'd taken from me and started thinking, very clearly, about what I actually had. 6 years of watching patterns other people couldn't see. 6 years of building models sharper than the software the whole firm paid for. 6 years nobody had bothered to notice, which meant 6 years nobody was watching me at all. I sat with that thought until almost 2 in the morning. The next day, on my lunch break, I walked into a bank 3 blocks from the office, not my usual branch, a different one, on purpose, and I applied for the largest personal loan I could plausibly qualify for. My hands were steady filling out the form. That surprised me more than anything else that day. I remember the loan officer asking what the funds were for. "Personal investment," I said. She didn't ask anything else. I combined that loan with every dollar in the someday account, 6 years of turkey sandwiches and secondhand furniture, and a coat I wore 4 winters past when it should have been replaced. I opened a brand new personal trading account under my name only at a completely different institution than the one Whitfield Cross used. I told no one, not Brandon, not Marcus, not my sister, not a single soul. Nobody at that office ever knew the account existed. Nobody still does, as far as I know. I traded quietly after that, before work, during my lunch break in the stairwell where the Wi-Fi barely reached, late at night after the dryers finally went silent. I used everything I'd learned watching other people's portfolios for 6 years, every pattern I'd spotted and never mentioned, every risk I'd flagged that got buried in someone else's inbox. I made mistakes, plenty of them. There was a March where I lost almost $11,000 in 9 days and didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night for 2 weeks straight, doing my actual job on autopilot while running numbers in my head during every meeting I was supposed to be taking notes in. My first real win came about 5 months in, a small position in a mid-cap industrial stock I'd been tracking for weeks, watching a pattern nobody else seemed to notice, building underneath the noise. When it finally broke the way I'd predicted, I made $412. I remember sitting in my car in the parking garage before my shift, staring at that number, and feeling something close to joy for the first time in longer than I could remember. $412. It wasn't the money. It was that I'd been right, entirely on my own, with nobody standing over my shoulder, taking notes to present as theirs later. The biggest decision I made in those 3 years came in year 2, on a stock everyone at my actual job was calling a disaster, a company Whitfield Cross had quietly downgraded in an internal memo I'd typed up myself. I'd read the numbers differently. The market was panicking over a headline. The underlying fundamentals told a completely different story, one only visible if you'd spent 6 years learning to see past what people were saying about a company to what the company was actually doing. I put almost a third of my account into that position. My hands were shaking so badly, typing in the order that I had to retype the share count twice. 6 weeks later, it had recovered everything the market had punished it for, and then kept climbing. That single trade did more for that account than the entire first year combined. I never told anyone at that firm. They downgraded a stock I just made a small fortune on. I still haven't. I remember that stretch as one long blur. Coffee, spreadsheets, Brandon's voice somewhere in the background asking me to clean this up real quick, my phone buzzing with account alerts. I checked in the bathroom with the door locked, my heart going so fast, some mornings I could feel it in my teeth. There was one Tuesday, about 2 years in, when Marcus walked past my desk, right as a trade confirmation popped up on my personal phone, screen up, sitting right next to my keyboard. My stomach dropped so fast I actually felt sick. Shit, 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 I thought, not moving a muscle, watching him out of the corner of my eye. He glanced at the screen for maybe half a second on his way to the coffee machine and said, "You investing now, Em? Good for you," in the exact tone you'd use to compliment someone's houseplant. He never looked twice. I sat there afterward with my hands flat on the desk, willing them to stop shaking, and understood for the first time just how invisible I really was in that office, and how, for once, that invisibility was working in my favor instead of against me. But I kept going, because for the first time in 6 years, the numbers were mine. Nobody was going to take credit for this one. There's a Tuesday I still think about a year and a half in. I'd had a good week, a position I'd built slowly over 4 months, finally paid off. I sat in that same stairwell on my lunch break, ate my same turkey sandwich, and watched the number in that account climb past a milestone I'd never said out loud to anyone, not even myself. I didn't smile. I just sat there, very still, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Proof. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days after I opened that account, I checked the balance at 11 at night, sitting on my kitchen floor in the exact spot where I'd broken down that Thursday. 7 figures. I was a millionaire. I refreshed the page 3 times, the way you press an elevator button again, even though you know it won't come faster. The number didn't change. It just sat there, glowing slightly too bright in the dark kitchen, the only light on in the whole apartment. Somewhere below me, a dryer buzzer went off, the same sound I'd fallen asleep to 1,000 nights in that apartment, and I remember thinking how strange it was that the world just kept making its ordinary noises through the biggest moment of my life. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I sat there on the same tile, in the same apartment, and I just breathed. In, out, for a long time. The money itself didn't fix anything. I want to be honest about that because I know how this sounds. I didn't feel rich. I felt something quieter, and, honestly, more important than rich. I felt proven, not to Brandon, not to Marcus, not to Ashley and her laughing comments about having a life. To myself. I needed proof that my quiet and my ability were never the same thing as weak. That I had always been more than the useful assistant who cleaned things up real quick. I didn't quit the next day. I know that's what you'd expect. I thought about it. God, I thought about it. I pictured walking into Marcus's office and putting my badge on his desk without a word. But that image never actually felt like the ending I wanted. It felt like it belonged to somebody else's story, not mine. My sister called that Sunday. Like always. "How's work?" she asked. "Fine, busy," I said, same as every other Sunday for 6 years, while I sat there with a number in a separate account that could have bought her a house outright. I almost told her. I got as far as, "Actually, something happened this week," and then I just let it trail off into asking about her kids instead. I'm still not sure why I couldn't say it out loud. Maybe I wasn't ready to watch anyone's face change when they found out. Not even hers. So I went to work the next morning. Same desk, same coffee stain shaped like Florida. Brandon needed something cleaned up real quick by 10. I did it. But something in me had changed shape overnight, and I don't think anyone in that office could have named what it was, even if they'd noticed. They hadn't noticed, by the way. Nobody ever does when the thing that's changing is on the inside. A few weeks after that, Ashley made her usual comment, something about how I never come to happy hour, how I must not have a life outside this building. The old me would have shrunk a little, smiled that smile that doesn't reach my eyes, said something apologetic. Instead, I just looked at her and said, "I have a pretty good one, actually," and smiled. A real one this time. She looked genuinely confused, like I'd answered a question in a language she didn't speak. I didn't explain. I never do. I started saying no to things. Small things at first. I stopped staying past 6, unless I actually wanted to. When Brandon brought me something at 4:40, with that same easy smile, I told him I'd get to it in the morning. He blinked at me, like I'd switched languages, mid-sentence. Come on, seriously? He said, and I just looked at him and said, seriously. He muttered something about how I'd gotten kind of difficult lately, under his breath, loud enough that he clearly meant for me to hear it. A year ago, that comment would have kept me up half the night. This time I just thought, quietly, almost fondly, difficult. Interesting word for someone who finally stopped doing your job for free. I still helped when people genuinely needed it. I'm still me, underneath all of this. But I stopped needing them to notice that I'd helped. That need, the one that had run underneath every year of my life at that office, had just quietly stopped being there. I talk less now than I used to, if you can believe that was even possible. But something strange happens when I do speak up in a meeting now. People actually stop and listen. I don't know if they can sense something's different, or if I just carry myself differently walking into a room. Maybe both. I've stopped trying to figure out why. I just know it's true. Marcus brought up the promotion again, this spring. 7th time. I said I'd think about it, and I meant it, not because I need the title, but because I might actually want it now, on my own terms, which feels like a completely different thing than needing it the way I used to. There's a new analyst who started in January, a quiet kid named Priya, who reminds me so much of myself at 23 that it's almost uncomfortable to watch. She stays late without being asked. She apologizes before she talks in meetings. Last month, I found her still at her desk at 8:30, and instead of walking past the way everyone always walked past me, I stopped. Go home, I told her. Whatever they need, it can wait until morning. I promise you it can. She looked at me like I'd told her something in a foreign language, the same way Brandon had looked at me months earlier, like the sentence itself didn't compute. I didn't explain the whole story. I just waited until she actually packed up her bag, and then I packed up mine too, and we left together, and I didn't say anything else about it. I don't know if she understood what I was actually trying to hand her. Maybe she will, eventually. Maybe not for 6 more years. I still live in the studio above the laundromat. I haven't told anyone what's in that account. Not my sister, not a single friend from college, nobody. Some nights I sit on that same kitchen floor with a cup of tea instead of a breakdown, and I think about the woman who filled out a loan application with steady hands on her lunch break. And I still don't fully understand where she found that kind of nerve. I was the underdog in that office for 6 years, the one everyone quietly underestimated, the one who did the real work in the dark while other people took the bow under the lights. I'm not telling you this because I want applause, or because I think it proves something about how the world works. I don't think it does, particularly. I think I just got lucky, and disciplined, and angry enough at exactly the right moment to do something reckless with my own money. But I know this much. I stopped being small, not loudly, not for anyone else to see. Just quietly, on a kitchen floor, at 11 o'clock, on an ordinary Tuesday night, 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, after I decided I was done waiting for someone else to notice what I was worth. Sometimes, on my lunch break, I still sit in that same stairwell where the Wi-Fi barely reaches, out of habit more than necessity now. I don't need to hide anymore, not really. There's nothing left to hide that would actually cost me anything if it came out. But I like it there. It's where I became someone, in secret, one spreadsheet, and one sleepless night at a time, and some part of me isn't ready to give that particular room up yet.